The money people. So yeah, make sure you thank the sponsors, because it is by virtue of the fact that they're willing to spend a lot of money to get to talk to you people. That's how awesome you are, that we get to say, yes, come out here. We will provide you food. You get to hang out around a casino and have all this awesome, cool stuff. So if you lose a bunch of money at the casino, that is not my fault. But good stuff. All right, so we're going to get started. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the gentleman who is my boss's cyber sensei. So we have this family thing going where he taught Dave, Dave taught me, I've taught a couple people, and we trace our lineage back to Ralph. And we're so very happy to have him here. He is a great friend, a great person, and has some very interesting hacking stories, both recent with, some things that have gone on, and some older stories. So if you get the chance to meet him up in the hallway, ask him about some of his early days of being the ethical hacker. Everybody, please welcome Ralph.
Thank you, Ben. As Ben said, I've been here every year that this has been going on, and it's really kind of an honor for me to see what's happened. In fact, I remember talking to Dave about 8 or 9 years ago, and him telling me, I'm going to quit my job and start a security company in St. Louis. And I was one of the few people who said, I think that's a great idea. And he said, really, why? And I said, because there's no security companies in St. Louis. There's nobody in that region really covering the space, and he really has done a bang-up job in getting this to what it is now, and has continued to do the right thing, which is to continue to spread the wealth and knowledge that we all need to have to make the world a better place at the end of the day. So my background started in computer hacking when I was 14. Somebody told me there was something called porn on a BBS, and I decided I wanted to get to the porn. So little did I know that I was actually learning something in the process, and never really actually got to the porn, but learned a lot of other things and met a lot of other interesting people, which are now deemed as hackers. So hackers, this is just, let's start here. Who are hackers? Okay, to make this very clear, I basically have categorized this into 4 different kinds of people in the entire world. And that is people who know and do, people who know but don't do, people who don't know but do, and then people who don't know and don't do. So that's pretty much every type of person in the entire world falls into one of these categories. And if you look at the types of people that are hackers, are usually people who know and do and people who don't know and do. And interestingly enough, if you look at the definition and the meaning of the word hacker, on one end, the meaning is it's an expert, somebody who's very good at programming with computers and very good at solving problems. On the other hand, this is, by the way, the same definition in the same dictionary, if you will. The different meaning is a person who engages in activity without skill or talent. So a hacker is an oxymoron, is basically what it is. But there's one thing in common between these people, and that is that people who know and do and people who don't know and do both do. And at the end, we might come up with a little robot on the left once we know and do, and the robot works, or we're going to come up with a robot on the right. It doesn't work quite well, but the more we stay and stick to it, the more we're going to end up with the little robot that works. So keep that in mind, because hacking isn't necessarily something that is specifically related to computers. So I don't know if any of you guys saw my talk. Show of hands, anybody who was here last year? All right, look, some of you guys are in here. And interestingly enough, I did a talk on hacking Hollywood and how simple it was to hack Hollywood, based on the fact that I've now been working in Hollywood for about 5 years. I worked on some very big cases of movies that leaked, as well as music that leaked. And I don't mean piracy, I mean leaked while in production. And learned a lot about that process, which is generally a very guarded process that most of us don't really know anything about. And so last year I kind of went through it, and unbeknownst to me, because I have been doing that talk in Hollywood for a while, it turns out that once I got back to Hollywood and they kind of came across the fact that I did it here, they were pretty scared that I showed a bunch of hackers how to hack Hollywood, because I didn't realize I was, demonstrating an O-Day on how to hack Hollywood. But and here we are a year later, and Sony, I told you so. Okay, this was going to happen. A major hack was going to happen within the entertainment industry. And then Sony happened. So let's talk a little bit about Sony and a Sony hack timeline here. First, November 24th of 2014, Sony employees came in and saw this on their desktops. Warning, we've already warned you, and this is just the beginning. We continue till our request be met. I think these guys are pirates, by the way. And we've obtained all your internal data, including your secrets and top secrets, and if you don't obey, we will release the data shown below. Determine what you will do by November 24th, 11 p.m. This was 11 a.m. by the time most of these people saw it. And interestingly enough, there's some links there, including some links of Sony Pictures stock footage, and they had even put the files there. Now, a brief timeline here, and having some insider knowledge, if you will, of Sony, because back in 2010, 2011, Sony PlayStation was hacked. And at the time, under what was Terramark, now Verizon, I was tasked with going in and evaluating and doing an assessment of the rest of Sony's network, because Sony PlayStation is not part of the Sony network, if you will. And now Sony operated their shared infrastructure outside of many different data centers, but primarily managed outside of New Jersey. And had to go there. And I'll tell you kind of this, for the most part, this presentation is storytelling. So, story here is I went in on a Monday and started running scans against their environment and asked, how many hosts am I scanning based on these ranges you gave me? They said, 2,000-3,000 servers. These are not workstations. It's like, wow, 2,000-3,000 servers. Okay, cool. Came back Tuesday, still running. Came back Wednesday, still running. Came back Thursday, still running. Wow, I've never had a scan run for 3 days on an infrastructure of any size that I've ever looked at. And so finally by Friday, it stopped running. I was using Nessus at the time for the first scan, and Nessus couldn't load the report. That's how big it was. And I was like, what? So I had to go and move this stuff over to another machine with a lot more memory. Finally got the report open, and it said 9,600 hosts scanned. And I went back to these folks and said, hey, guys, you said it was like 3,000 hosts. 3,000, 6,000, 9,000. That was literally the response. I was like, well, that's a big difference in scope of what I've got to look at. It took 3 weeks to go through all this stuff. And obviously, hundreds, almost 1,000 different critical vulnerabilities were found. This is the same environment that runs Sony Pictures, Sony Entertainment, Sony Music, Sony Electronics, and the rest of Sony's infrastructure outside of PlayStation. So, needless to say, even before the presentation last year, I was saying, you guys are going to get hit hard once somebody actually figures out these networks. So, here we are in December of 2014. They get that thing. Now, before they get that message that we just saw, before they get this, what most people don't know is there were several emails to executives at Sony from the hackers saying, we've hacked you. And you can imagine by that time they've been in there for months. Okay, by the time they actually tell you they've hacked you. So these emails were never opened. They were never really read by these executives, including Linton and some of the high-end executives that were later, their emails were out on the internet. So again, November 21st is really when Sony received emails from God's Apstis. That was the name of these folks who contacted them and say, we've hacked you. Now, interestingly enough, there was no mention of the interview. There was no mention of stop this movie. There was no mention of North Korea in any of these emails. And then all of a sudden, in November 24th, early morning of November 24th, their wiper activated. And just by the name, as you can imagine, it wiped their entire infrastructure. This included most of their recent backups and also some of their older backups. So they didn't know just how far and how deep this went. Around November 22nd, I got a call from a friend who works at Sony, and this person's in the legal department, someone who I had worked with before, and they were freaking out. They said, we've been told that our iPhones may be hacked, our tablets may be hacked, all of our personal information may be hacked, and we've been told not to go to work until further notice. That's pretty bad. Okay, so this is before the November 24th, message that we all know and love now. The Guardians of Peace claim credit for this and start releasing data by releasing 5 movies that have yet been unreleased, including Annie. Then, shortly thereafter, on November 27th, around December 1st, really the FBI got involved, and any of us who get flash alerts from the FBI got a flash alert about this. And then all of a sudden, Destover malware was discovered, and that's how we start tying this all to North Korea. The GOP, again, the Guardians of Peace, start leaking Sony executive emails on December 11th. Then they hit the first time that Sony's hit with the first of what would be many class action lawsuits was December 15th by employees or ex-employees. Sony cancels the interview from going to the theaters. The FBI launches has already launched its investigation and says that this has been done by North Korea. And finally, December 23rd, they decide they're going to release the interview, and they release the interview. Now, to quote Mark Rogers, a friend from DEF CON, who wrote that the FBI's indicators seem to rely on malware that is widely distributed, widely available to purchase, and IP addresses that are easily hijacked by any bad guy. So this has been a big part of the controversy around Sony. Is North Korea involved? The feds have stuck to that it's North Korea is involved. Most of us in the industry who are not feds, even though we've worked with feds, do not agree that this has anything to do with North Korea, other than maybe Kim Jong-il is over there going, that's about it. North Korea doesn't really have too many capabilities in this area, even though I will tell you right now, this is not the most advanced of hacks from the perspective of what was used. It is believed that this may have been initiated through a phishing attack. Most of the people that we found lots and lots, and now everyone can go and look at them on WikiLeaks, right? And I'll tell you some interesting things about WikiLeaks. But just a little more of a breakdown here of the timeline of what happened in more detail. Mandian statement on December 6th. Sony, as you notice on the 2nd, issues a company-wide alert. Now this is really crazy because this is a massive organization, and to think that, all of Sony was literally at a standstill. All filming stopped. All production stopped. Everything stopped. So this is probably an example of one of the worst hacks in history when it comes to whether it be Sony Pictures or whether it be some other organization, really from the perspective of really putting someone on their knees when it comes to operating. This did that. So as you see here, I kind of have a breakdown, and I will make some of this presentation available for you guys to see after this. And I say some because soon here I'm going to talk about one of my other stories, which is the making of the Edward Snowden movie. I am the technical supervisor to Oliver Stone on what you guys will see hopefully in December 25th, called Snowden. And I learned a lot about the Snowden issue that I didn't quite know through the making of this film. I'm going to do a little bit of a recap here as to exactly how film works. So back to a little bit of last year's talk. The life cycle of a film starts with a script. That's where everything starts in the film world. You start with a script, and then from there it goes into development in some way. From there it goes into green lighting it, meaning saying, yeah, we're going to make the movie. And then once it goes from that, then you have to worry about funding, just like anything else, and budgeting. And then you cast all the right people, and then location scouting. By the way, the first one of those things up there, this is the kind of stuff Hollywood doesn't share with most people, it's called packaging. And I know that term sounds like it'd be some sort of package, but it's not. It just means a bunch of people meeting and saying, we're going to get Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Oliver Stone and so and so and so and so. And they talk to all these people and say, if we did this movie, would you be on board? And if they say yes, that's called packaging. I thought it was something, I thought there would be like a PowerPoint involved or something, but nope. And so once they've got it all packaged, then they can get the funding, then they can start doing all the rest of the stuff, the location scouting, the crew hires, defining who the production design team will be, things like production scheduling, when are we going to shoot this? It gets really complicated, and it's really expensive for many reasons. I still say that if you don't believe in miracles, you should come on a movie set and see how a movie is made. It's a miracle movies get made, because there's so many moving parts and so many egos and so many people involved that it really is just a miracle that it happens. But as you go through this process now, you go into the dailies processing, how that's going to be processed, all the visual effects stuff and how that's going to be processed, sound editorial. You ever seen a movie without sound? It sucks. Okay, so that's what I found is one of the most valuable people on a movie set is the sound guy, because if you take away the sound, the movie's going to suck. So it goes through all the entire process, and then ultimately we get down to that distribution, that orange box down there. And for, as long as I can remember, as long as you guys know, the MPAA, all those things are all designed around protecting intellectual property in distribution, not in the making of. It's all about distribution. We want to make our money. Okay, so now we got piracy, and that's what it's all anti-piracy. So we got pre-production issues, production, post-production issues, and there's a lot of information at risk here. From the script itself, at the very early stages, I don't know if you guys heard, last year, Quentin Tarantino had a script that was leaked on the internet, and as a result, the movie was just canned. They said, we're not making it because the script got out. So that's hundreds of millions of dollars that it costs Hollywood to not make a movie. Right? So from the very beginning stages through budgeting and then scheduling, and we've got contracts, we've got cast, we've got key crew hires, we've got conceptual designs, we've got set construction information and production office information, and we got post facilities and workflow, location scouting, all of these type of things. Guess what? They're all digital. Everything's on a computer. There is no paper anymore. All the way from the moment of capture, it's on a digital camera. And even for those, I worked with Oliver on Savages, and even in that movie, while being shot in film, the film was taken out of the can, put into the can, and taken into an archival facility. All editing is done digitally. Everything is transcoded digitally the moment it's captured. And so it's all digital. Every communication from there on is digital. But there really hasn't been, and still really isn't, much of a focus in securing that, even though the MPAA has guidelines on all of this kind of stuff. So I was lucky enough on this film, even more so than Savages, to be involved at a very early stage, from the script all the way through to, hopefully all the way through to distribution. In addition to providing script advice, if you will, let's call it advice, to the authenticity of a number of different things in the film, to production design and working with a production design team on the sets and all that sort of stuff, graphic design, the screens that you see, how much bull is on the screens, and how much needs to be there, that doesn't need to be there, so on. Visual effects, very interesting. You have to work with the visual effects guys because you're shooting a room like this, and depending on how the director of photography is shooting it, it gives them only so much space to work in. It's fascinating what they do. And then work with the principal photography. I work with some of the best and most amazing artists in that area, which, in my opinion, in many ways, are hackers too. Because what they have to do, in many ways, is very creative. It's just not technical in the sense that we think about it, right? So Anthony Dodd Mantle was the head of principal photography. That guy is well known for he won a Grammy for Slumdog Millionaire. What is that? 27 Days After, or whatever that was, that movie. So this guy is the master of digital filming. This is the first movie Oliver Stone has ever shot on a digital camera. And this was shot on a digital camera not available to the market, an Alexa 6K. We don't even have 6K televisions, but that's how it was shot. Now, the rest of this, I'm going to give you a little show and tell, some pictures of my experience in the filming of Snowden. First of all, I had to explain to Oliver up there that is not a selfie. That's he posted that as a selfie, the first one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt up there. So he said, my first selfie. I was like, no, Oliver, you got to take the picture of yourself. That's his selfie, you're in it. It's a little bit different. We shot for 2.5 months. I was there for 2 weeks prior to filming, and then 2.5 months of production in Munich, Germany. Guten Tag, Guten Tag. It was quite an experience. It was really cool because Munich, Germany is Central Europe. You can go pretty much every weekend, went to a different country, saw different things. It was very cool. Much like, unlike working at a bank, the hours are not 9 to 5, but you do have weekends off. And these are some of the pictures that have been made public on the internet of the production of Snowden. We then went to D.C. and we shot in D.C. for a week, and then we went to Hawaii and we shot in Hawaii for a week, and then we went to Hong Kong and we shot in Hong Kong, and then we went back to Munich and finished shooting in Munich. I'd like to introduce you to my travel buddy. His name is Ruggles the Bear. Ruggles was a producer, as you can tell on the movie. That just tells you, how valuable producers are, It's kind of a babysitting job. But Ruggles went around with us everywhere. In fact, actually from here on in, make sure we're not recording this because you're not supposed to be seeing